all for attending our presentation today. We are Modality AI from down the street, just a few blocks down in the Soma neighborhood. We focus on self-directed neurological assessments of specifically things like ALS, and this is to address one of the major pain points of the development of interventional therapeutics, which is that in many cases drug trials fail. You all know, specifically in later stage trials like phase 3 studies in ALS, that the chance of a failure is extremely high. And that is among other reasons associated with the fact that today the endpoints that are being used in these trials are still traditional endpoints like the ALS FRSR, which have many characteristics that make them not very sensitive and not very robust and not very responsive. And so one wished there was a way to objectively do these things, do them at scale and potentially in convenience of people's homes. So what we do is, at Modality, we are inspired by how neurologists actually do these interviews when they create these assessments, like the ALS FRSR, for example. Clinical interviews usually form the basis of this. As you can see here, what we do instead is we have a virtual guide that mimics and emulates what a clinical interview looks and feels like. And Tina is her name. Tina interviews patients, and she tells from what patients say and do, how they function and feel in these interviews by interpreting the speech, the language, facial movements, body movements, and also what patients say about their own disease with their own words. So you can think about it as, Tina interviewing you, providing you specific tasks such as reading passage of text or describing a picture or doing a facial movement task or doing a phenotypic task. Things like this, very structured interview, and you provide at the end of the day assessments in real time that provide the objective characteristic of disease progression and treatment response. And so that's done in the convenience of people's homes in the way of using their own devices. So that's very important to note. You don't have to install any software, you don't have to ship any special devices. You don't even have to remember passwords or credentials because we send you a web link. And you click on the link, and the next thing that happens on your own device, on your laptop, on your smartphone, your iPad, Tina pops up in the browser and speaks to you. And she listens to you as long as you want to speak to her, and goes through these standardized batteries in a very straightforward fashion. She provides all the instructions, and so you don't have to know anything before this as a patient. It's the most convenient and very pleasant experience because patients build a personal connection to Tina and look forward to the next assessment. So operational advantages, I mentioned a few, no hardware, no software, works on any device that's web connected, which makes it extremely accessible pretty much to anyone nowadays. And it's self-administered, so there's no humans involved in the process. That removes the variability that is associated with neurological interviews and examinations. And you may wonder, we talked about Kylo earlier about the Barber effect and the associated decline in speaking ability, of course. Tina is going to work with you until you lose your voice entirely. So when you're intubated as an ALS patient, that's basically when these assessments don't work any longer. But that's usually when patients drop out of trials of that note. And data is immediately available because these measurements are real-time. They're processed in the cloud in real time. Our customers, I mentioned, we are providing these insights for the use in clinical research only, clinical studies, specifically working with biotech pharma companies, but also with sponsors that are like federal government or non-governmental institutions, like the Michael J. Fox Foundation or the Veterans Administration, for example. Quick overview of our scientific KPIs and also our pipeline, because you have a few of the team members here, Chief Science Officer, one of the senior research scientists as well. There's a lot of applications that are going alongside these new types of assessments, which is necessary in order to validate them and show, for example, that they're clinically meaningful, analytically validated, and verified and robust in these real-world settings. We have worked with almost 18,000 patients today across different disease areas. ALS is very core and front and center for us since the beginning of our journey. Parkinson's disease as well. We are in many observational studies and interventional trials, used as endpoints in these trials from phase 1 all the way through phase 3 studies, 39 studies today, and across many countries. So Tina is actually multilingual. She speaks a lot of European languages and Asian languages as well, and provides these benefits. I mentioned a few of the team members are here in the audience if you want to catch up with them as well. And that leads me actually to one of the team members, which I would like to bring you to stage. Vikram, our Chief Science Officer and long-term friend.
Thank you, David. Good afternoon, everyone. So now let's get into the science a little bit. What David has told you a little bit about the operational advantages of Tina, but what's the science behind it, right? So typically here is what we would recommend, and we have used both in interventional trials, of course, in observational studies. We are also working on with a lot of academic partners, also through grants. This is our typical ALS protocol, which has been refined over many iterations. Again, we did not necessarily invent this. This is just operationalized what the field has known and what we have also contributed by our own scientific research at scale. We are operationalizing this at scale, right? So the idea is that it's multifactorial. It is measuring, for example, aspects of speech timing, aspects of intelligibility, which we know, again, a bunch of us in the room know this already, is impacted in speech. We capture pausing characteristics and respiratory capacity, which again, as we know, is impaired. And we also are able to measure orofacial movement characteristics, which is particularly affected in limb onset ALS. And so all of these complement patient reports in their own words. That's the patient report of problems of the problem, which allows us to, using NLP and the power of deep learning AI, to automatically extract clinically relevant symptoms from patient verbatims. So we're kind of connecting those two words. And this is rendered, these metrics and measures are computed over the course of a 10-minute, a roughly 10-minute interaction, which can be done as frequently as you like. But our typical protocol is recommended every 2 weeks. And this includes sustained phonation, like a radicokinesis, where you say pataka, 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 or something like that, a reading passage, and as well as picture descriptions and the problem as well. Happy to talk more about this in more detail offline, but this is the meat of it, right? Why are we recommending this? Because speech measures capture ALS disease progression. It's not just us who have shown this, many others in the field have shown this, but we've seen this at scale. And in fact, this is an observation from what we now think is the world's largest audio-visual database of speakers with ALS, which has over 500 speakers collected in collaboration with Everything ALS. And what we find is that these measures are responsive in that we can quantify that it takes a certain amount of time to detect both a statistically and a clinically meaningful change in both bulbar and limb onset. And we can do this with certain measures in as little as 4 to 9 weeks. And we can also show that these measures are way more sensitive than the ALS-FRSR, which hopefully is not too unintuitive for you, because again, ALS-FRSR is a very coarse measure in many ways. But we can actually see changes in these measures well before the ALS-FRSR shows the change. And this is an illustration of what this looks like. And this is where, for example, you see progression, or rather these are growth curve models, where you see an average slope of, where each subject is fitted with a random slope, and you're just visualizing the average for limb onset in red and bulbar onset in blue, and we see that more rapid progression in bulbar onset that allows us to actually look at this. We see that this responsiveness is also robust to sample size. We see that the mean responsiveness is generally stable. What you see is the standard deviation of the the confidence interval about this reduces as you go. But this gives us a lot of confidence that these measures are robust, especially with the smaller sample sizes that are typical of early stage clinical trials. What's more, you can really leverage multimodality in the sense that you're collecting multiple data streams of information to make the measurements more robust. And the way we can do that is through an interpretable index where we can quantify how much each modality contributes to the overall index. So this is interpretable. So we can go back to say how much of your deterioration was caused by, say, the reduction in intelligibility versus respiration versus facial movement and so on. What's more, this is another important operational aspect of things, especially if you're collecting remotely and at scale. We need to make sure that the data quality and adherence is really good. And we are able to quantify this and see that we have excellent adherence, which is over 98%. Again, these are all remote trials, right? These are not where you have to come to the clinic and have someone supervise. But we also have excellent audio quality and video quality. Because again, there's a virtual agent, Tina, a virtual guide, who is constantly kind of guiding the interaction and telling you when things are not as they should. So what are our takeaways? We can see that multimodal speech biomarkers can be reliably extracted from remote recordings. And there's several measures which show significant longitudinal change, but chief among them is a measure we like to call canonical timing alignment, which captures intelligibility of speech particularly. And this detected the changes most quickly. These findings are stable with small sample sizes, and these measures detect change well before the ALS-FRSR shows any change. They're also correlated with speech language pathology measures like listener effort. And if you'd like to hear more or see more about that, we have a poster throughout these 3 days. And we also have a poster where we talk about how we can predict longitudinally for unseen data, clinical trials. So please go check out those posters if you're interested. So let me end by just answering this simple question, right? So why should you use Tina in your ALS trials? The first reason is expertise and experience. We are able to provide objective measures scalably in a remote fashion. And this is the foundation that underpins this is both extensive scientific evidence as well as operational expertise, especially among digital health technologies in ALS. We are patient-centric in that we are the most easy to use digital technology without any device or app or login, and we measure what patients say and what they do, both. So it's a comprehensive solution. And what underpins this comprehensiveness is multimodality, in that we comprehensively assess how patients feel and function via analysis of multiple modalities of health information, whether it's speech, language, body and facial movements, as well as patients' self-report of their problems in their own world, which is the problem. All right, and with that I'd like to conclude, and thank you for your attention.